I do not believe that the government should be a father to everyone. I do not believe, for example, that the government should pay for college tuition, because I worked my ass off, took it very seriously, didn't fail classes, and got out in 3.5 years instead of 4 years because I was taking on debt. And when I wrote my book, I was 20 years old. My very first check that came in, I paid off my student loan debt. And it pisses me off when I see these guys that are like the violinists that got $250,000 of his student loans paid off the other day. When I made the tough decision, because I think in America, we have this idea now that everything should somehow be like subsidized by the government. Like, no, it shouldn't. Should not be subsidized by the government. I love Donald Trump's policy of you can do what I did, because I think we have for far too long coddled too many young people in this country to make them believe that there's enough excuses for why they're not making it. My dad never gave me an excuse. He never said, hey, we live in a high crime area. We live in an area that's the most dangerous city in America right now, as for example, is Memphis. He didn't say to me, hey, you're probably not going to go to college. What he said was, you better figure out how to go to college because you're going to pay for it. And so I had an option. It was either get really good at academics or get really good at a sport. I was a good athlete, but it was real clear early on that he wasn't discouraging me of anything. He was just making it clear that you better wake up and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. The government's job is not to be your daddy. The government's job is not to take care and coddle you. The government's job is to give you the opportunity to succeed on your own and to then learn and grow. And whether it is my career path, right, which had started at taking care of lawns, okay, and then actually like cleaning tennis courts and working in the shop for the rich people, right? Then learning that game from those people and then getting a college scholarship from it. Like it's being a entrepreneur, and you don't have to, the government has now basically said, no, you don't have to do anything if you don't want to. We're going to take care of you. We're going to give you a lot of excuses. Hey, you're in a failing school. There's your excuse. Hey, you live in high crime. There's your another excuse. Hey, you're in a broken home. There's another excuse for you. That is the problem. And so I don't think it was Donald Trump like lying. I think Donald Trump's point that he made that connected with so many minorities. And the reason why I think he's actually going to do really well with minority voters this time is, I'm going to give you opportunities through getting the government out of your damn way.
In this country right now, we need living wage jobs. We need the rich to pay their fair share. And I think part of the cult of personality of Trump, I think you're absolutely right, is to run around saying, hey, look at that immigrant over there. That's the reason why your life sucks, right? And that is literally how he sort of built this kind of kind of fascist kind of political narrative of, I am your hero, I'm the savior. Yeah, I'm a billionaire, but I'm also the everyman. You know, yeah, I represent the poor, but I am from the elite circles, you know, and I have the pathway out. And the pathway out is to point the finger at that guy over there. And even as I hear you tell your story about having to work, knowing you had to save to college or get really good at a sport, again, I respect the work ethic. I respect the calculus you made. My point is, if we properly invested in society, there'd be a university for free that you could go to, so that you wouldn't have to have student loans and all that stuff. And in the same way that as we began the conversation, you were critical of student loan repayment or student debt forgiveness. I'm
critical of it because I think it's buying votes. I just think it's straight up buying votes. And right, it's a tactic to buy votes. And it's frustrating for people like myself that had to take out student loans. And I didn't have a semester in college where I didn't take 17 hours or less because I was taking on the student loans. And then all of a sudden, this moron takes out $250,000. He's a 52-year-old violinist and all of his debt gets paid off last week. That pisses me off as a hard worker.
Right. But here's the problem. Y'all don't have that same energy, that same smoke for the situation where a small business owner gets a huge business loan and spends 20 years paying it back, and Wall Street or Shake Shack gets a PPP loan that wipes out all of their debt. Because when rich people do it, we say, oh, well, they're stimulating the economy.
No, I hated the PPP loans.
No, but what I'm saying, though, is I didn't hear you criticizing Trump for it. And
sure I did. Oh, I was screaming about how absurd this was. Like, this is going to be 50, 60% abuse.
Is that buying votes? Let me ask you a question. Was that buying votes?
Was PPP?
Yeah, yeah.
I think if you look at the context of what was happening in the country when they were doing PPP, I think you would agree. Everybody said the world was on fire and the economy was on fire, and they were trying to stop gap it. Like, you got to go back and look at the time. But once we saw the abuse and how it was being abused, okay, and we realized that this was a well-intentioned idea with a house on fire, that then is something that needed to be reined in quickly. And they didn't rein it in. I was screaming from the hilltops that all of this money we were going to print was going to be a disaster for the economy. It was going to mean inflation was coming. It was going to mean that it was going to be stagnation of jobs and wages. And that's exactly what happened.
Wait, so just so I'm clear, before the abuse, as you put it, you were not critical of it.
No, I was suspicious, and I raised those. I said, here is my worry when it first came out, because I own small businesses. I own them. And when COVID was going down, and they were like, and then I had employees coming to me, Mark, going, hey, can you fire me? Because I'll make more money sitting at home than I will working for you. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to fire you so you can game the system. Like, no, you're show up for work. If you want to quit, quit. But I'm not going to fire you. They're like, well, my brother's making more money not going to work than he's going to work. And when that happened, I was screaming on TV that this was a disaster. We need to stop it now.
So that's two things. One, I want you to consider the context in which we're positioned, where you literally, if you believe that hard work is not just a good idea, but a moral virtue, and we have an economy that rewards people for not working, that you can do better without working, that means the system needs to be repaired. It needs to be completely.
Look, if we, here's where you and I think. Here's where you and I think agree.
But there's another point here. There's another point here. Again, I think that when we make investments for poor people, we forgive their debt, which also stimulates the economy, which also creates breathing room for them in the same way that it does for Wall Street when we forgive PPP loans. One is seen as a necessary, as you framed it, like a necessary strategy to save the economy. The other is seen as just a giveaway to poor people. And in general, and I'm not speaking about you now, I'm speaking of the Republican Party in general, most don't say a word about PPP loan forgiveness, but they have everything to say about student debt forgiveness. I've even seen Republican politicians and pundits get PPP loans forgiven and still be mad at debt forgiveness for poor people. I'm saying let's invest in both.